Hello and welcome back to the Villa podcast. As always, I'm here with my good friend Dan Moisman. Dan, how you doing, mate? Because we're recording this immediately after Aston Villa have unfortunately lost 2-1 to West Ham. I know how you are, Dan, but we've made it a thing in the intro for me to ask how you are. So just talk to me, Dan. Talk to me.
The only positive that I can name is that we've gone festive.
Yeah.
on the
I rate that.
We've got here. Christmas is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. To be honest with you, that snowman's nose down there is a pretty good representation of how I'm feeling at the moment because it's sort of just sliding halfway off his face. So yeah, we've gone festive, here on the Villa podcast, but it's a pretty good representation of how I feel because it's a pretty sad sight nonetheless. Tough evening, bro. Tough evening.
Really tough. And for those of you who are listening and not watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a Villa shirt. Dan's wearing a Bulls jersey. Two teams at the moment who equally as depressing, really, Dan, to be fair, aren't they? It's not like we can get much joy anywhere else in our lives.
Yeah. Oh,
and
God.
I mean, Villa tonight, and I'm not just saying this because we lost Dan. I didn't at all feel convinced at any point that we were going to win this game. We had immediately, just to jump in the stats, in 66% possession, crazy considering you're away from home. Again, I say it every week, this is the COVID Premier League, though things are not normal. 16 shots from Villa with only 6 on target, 7 corners compared to West Ham's 3. Obviously, they managed to score from 1. That is all that counts. And obviously, we lost this game 2-1. Like, looking at them stats, I'm convinced I watched a different game. Like, possession, I can see it. I do think, in fairness, we had more of the ball. But West Ham, Dan, they scored straight away and they were happy to sit back until Grealish scored. And that forced them to come out and play. And they did the exact same in the second half, whereby as soon as they got their second goal to put them back in the lead, they just sat back and they knew what they had to do for the rest of the game, Dan.
Well, mate, it's one of those whereby West Ham were terrible. I thought there's nothing that they did in the game that impressed me. But all they did, they were disciplined tactically. They have a manager who, to all intents and purposes, is aware of what he needs to do to win those. The halftime substitutes that he made, and we can sort of come back to look through this game chronologically because we need to start with that goal, and I'm sure you have a lot to say on zonal marking. Dean Smith and David Moyes on the touchline there. David Moyes could see the way the tide was turning in the first half. I thought, again, it was another slow start from Villa. Forget the goal. We'll come on to talk about that. Just the fact that we conceded a corner after just over a minute tells you all you need to know about how slowly we started that game. We didn't have any kind of intensity. The problem is with the Villa at the moment is that I feel as soon as a goal goes in, we lose any tactical discipline or any sense of a game plan, and it's completely haphazard. It's frantic. We have no composure in that situation after we won a goal down. And it wasn't until Jack picked the ball up and literally went, right, F this, I'm going to have to do it myself, picks up the ball on the halfway line and slaps one in from 25 yards, that Villa calmed. Douglas was able to dictate play. Well, Douglas wasn't able to dictate play, and that was part of the problem, to be honest with you. Douglas was able to dictate the play, and Villa had the possession stats that you were talking about after that. But at halftime, as I said, Moyes sees the game is turning against his side, makes 2 subs, one of which is Said Benrahma, and 28 seconds into the second half, Said Benrahma crosses for Jarrod Bowen, which I can't imagine a more painful scenario considering I genuinely thought at points in the last 12 months that we were going to sign both of those players. He scores. And after that, West Ham went back to their game plan of being dogged, of being determined. And yes, they got lucky. But they operated a game plan. And for West Ham, and for, when you appoint a manager like David Moyes, that's what you appoint him for. You don't appoint David Moyes expecting, attacking and hunting, possession-based football. You appoint David Moyes because he knows the game. He knows what it takes to get results. And that's what he did for West Ham tonight.
I think, the key phrase I want to pick out from you there, Dan, is game plan, because Villa didn't really have one tonight, as it seems. And as you say, we started slow, which isn't really surprising given if you look at the Brighton game, if you look at the Leicester game, it's not uncommon of Villa to not be, 100% straight away. We've seen that this season. As frustrating as it is, it's just, it's a part of our game, unfortunately, that we need to iron out. And I think, it's glaringly obvious for me to sit here and say Villa really missed Ross Barkley, but I tweeted this in the game. The midfield just needed a presence, someone who was confident on the ball, someone who could run at defenders, make people commit. And obviously, you've got Jack Grealish, who is playing in that wide position. But I really thought this game lent itself to Jacob Ramsey. Obviously, not to start. I can totally understand why Conor Hourihane starts before all the Conor Hourihane apologists on me in the comments. It's the logical change to make. It really is. But as the game went on, as we were chasing, there was just a very distinct lack of mobility in the midfield. And I could really sit here and struggle to tell you how Villa actually lined up, whether it was a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, because at times I feel like John McGinn was just kind of missing in the Barkley role far up the pitch. But then Conor Hourihane's kind of stuck in no man's land. And it wasn't really like, obviously with the system before, when it's quite clearly been a 4-2-3-1 and Ross Barkley's been in the team and of course he's further up, the double pivot of McGinn and Louise, naturally one person is going to generally be further up the pitch because that's how a double pivot works when you're in possession. But both in possession and out of possession, it kind of just seemed like Douglas Louise was anchoring the midfield at the 6, and Conor Hourihane and McGinn were both taking it in turns to just kind of stand wherever they want. It was almost like it was a 4-1-1-3. Like there was no kind of cohesion there. And it was in terms of trying to, as you said, Dan, they set up after they scored the goal to defend. And that's what they did. And you've got to give them credit for that. But as soon as we went 1-0 down, it's almost as if, I don't want to say that look, they completely didn't down to us because we really did give that game a go. I don't want to kind of get my words mixed here, but I just feel like there wasn't that urgency that we really needed in the midfield. And the midfield is so important, especially in a game like this, because they've got two players who sit in that middle of that 4 when they were playing the 3-4-3 in Rice and Soucek, and their job is just to break up the play. Now, if you're not trying to get about that midfield, which is a fairly immobile midfield, then you've got some problems. You really do, because listen, Soucek, very good player in his own right, goal scoring threat from set pieces. Thankfully, he didn't score one today. But even Rice, I find he's a limited player. I've said this before. I don't really have this glowing opinion on Declan Rice that a lot of other football fans seem to have, Dan, because it could be the same thing, like, with how we hyped Grealish up. Obviously, in my opinion, he's obviously lived up to that, and other people are finally starting to see that. But I think he's come through the academy. He's that kind of player. He's their Grealish in that sense. I just can't help but feel like when they set up the way they did, you have to have an agile and an active midfield that can take advantage of that. And it's frustrating as well, because there was times where Louise was finding these beautiful passes, these diagonal balls that were going in between the centre-back and the wing-back in Kufal. There was space there to be found. And when that ball's played, you need a midfield runner to then attack it, because a lot of the time it was Watkins that was finding that space out wide. I've just sat here and rambled. I don't really know if that makes too much sense, Dan, but the midfield wasn't it. That's my point.
Well, look, mate, I think that's a very valid point, and I don't think the midfield was on form today, to be honest with you. I think it's yet again, after the 89 minutes of the Brighton game and now this West Ham game, it really does highlight the importance of Ross Barkley and just how crucial he is to this team. But I'm going to look at it from a completely, and this is not to negate what you've just said, mate, but look at it from a completely different angle, whereby we did more than enough to win this game.
Yeah, well, the stats say that, yeah.
The midfield didn't do a very good job, but we had the chances to win this game. And I'm not just talking scrape it 3-2. Like, we could have easily scored four goals tonight. There is going to be obvious talk about the penalty miss, the goal that Watkins has ruled out offside. You had the chance that Trezeguet, there was the only part of the goal covered by Fabianski's failing right arm, Trezeguet manages to hit. You then had a weird incident in the second half, and if you remember this, whereby there was a cross played in for Trezeguet, who flicks it onto Watkins. He's onside. the goal is at his mercy. He's about 6 yards out. He can hit it on the volley, and he lets it bounce. I don't know if he thought he was offside, but even that isn't a just reason for not hitting that, because put it away and then VAR will decide if it's offside or not, and he wasn't. So you had that incident. Villa could have scored 4 or 5 goals tonight, and it's frustrating that, yes. Look, one of the points I want to talk about is Watkins, and he had a very unlucky evening tonight. But there are certain things that are going on within the Villa whereby the stats are plain to see that these are decisions that we shouldn't be making. Ollie Watkins shouldn't be our penalty taker. The man has scored 2 penalties in his career and has missed 4 of his last 5. Don't give him, like,
Who's the penalty taker then, Dan? Because Grealish has an equally poor record. You can't give it to Anwar El Ghazi. I don't even think he was on the pitch at this point. So, I think, who steps up and takes that penalty?
I think Jack has to shoulder the responsibility. Yes, I know he's not.
He missed 4 last season.
He did. Yeah, I know. And look, I think this is another problem within the team, is that we don't have anyone to step up in the situation. But when the stats are against, I think as captain, I would back. I think Jack is a separate entity this season. He has more of an house for goal, and I would back him more in this season in those situations. I think he's handed one off to Ollie at the end of the Southampton game, which was a nice gesture. But Jack, I think in those situations whereby if Ollie is clearly, and this is not a Villa problem, this is clearly a problem that he's had at Brentford, whereby he doesn't seem to thrive from the spot. I would back our skipper now this season with the goal scoring nose that he has more so than ever to put that away. If Jack misses, then I don't know what you do, mate. But this is what I mean, is that regardless, you can miss the penalty and we still have the chances to win the game. Trezeguet is the highest rated player in the Premier League by who scored not to have scored a goal this season. That's why. He is a player whereby, and to be honest with you, mate, for all of Trezeguet's improvements, it does feel like we're starting to say this at the end of every game now. Trezeguet is missing big chances. He did it in the Brighton game as well. There were chances we had to kill that game off. He get unlucky, yes, but you do start to get to a point where, despite his improvements in almost every other aspect of his game, this is still a problem for him.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to say it because, again, I don't want this to seem like I'm slandering anyone here, but it's like the El Ghazi miscompilations of last season. It's really hard to stomach, and I want to say out of character from Trez, because we've seen how clinical he can be. I think just looking at him and just the reaction afterwards as well, he knows that's going to keep him up at night. It's going to keep all of us up at night, but he knows he should have scored that, especially, as you say, after what happened in the last game against Brighton. It's a really frustrating one, and he's probably gutted that he came off. But I think even regardless of whether he took that boot to the face from Rice, it looked like he was coming off anyway for Bertrand and Anwar, and just while I'm talking about Anwar, I think we've got to give him props for managing to force a few appearances back in, whether that is through the lack of Keenan Davis in the side or whatever. I think Anwar kind of looked dead and buried after that Everton game last season away. That looked like the last we were really going to see of him, and he didn't come on and affect the game. So maybe I'm again just chatting rubbish here, but good to see Bertrand. I thought as well, it was a bit frustrating, Dan, Bertrand, for me, because it took him about 15 minutes to have his first touch, and of course that was no fault of his own. A player that I want to highlight is Matty Cash, because I think really out of character from him tonight. Decision making was not it for him. He couldn't decide whether he needed to make the run, make the pass. He was taking far too many touches. People talk about how many touches Grealish takes. Cash, there was times where he could, there's a 1-2 on, or you'd expect him to go and dribble past Masuaku or something like that, and he's coming back inside. I don't know what is up with him. It was out of character. He's not been like this throughout the whole of the season. It was disappointing from him. And Dan, even on the chances that Villa had late on, in the goal that Watkins scored, that was shockingly ruled offside, is the fact that when they're looking at that, right, okay, they're looking to see if his armpit or if his toenail or something is offside. How, when they took about 4 minutes to look at this footage, did they not see that Andrea Bonner is essentially doing hell in a cell with Watkins? How is the penalty not given after that? He is all over him. And I mean, we can sit here and argue all day. Well, it wouldn't even be an argument. It would be a discussion because it's a ridiculous offside. And I know you, of course, share the same sentiments, but it's one of them ones where, you know, you get them one way, you don't get them another week. And it's kind of, you need to have this stance on VAR, and nobody wants it. But again, I don't see too many people complaining when it goes their way. But, you know, here we are, Dan, with frustrating because, you know, even a point that would have been really good because now, you know, we've struggled in our past few games. If we'd have won this, we'd have gone up to fourth. And obviously, listen, we're not going to be anywhere near there by the end of the season, especially if we keep playing like this, Dan. But it's just one of them things. If you can't win, just don't lose.
Well, yeah, mate, you made some very valid points there. And the Matty Cash one is very interesting because I did a little digging after the game, and Matty Cash had 8% possession, like
That's
in the game.
lot.
Like, let me give you some context to that. So Matty Cash had 8% possession. Jack Grealish had 5.9. So Villa had what, 66% possession? Did you say at the start?
Yeah.
8% of that was Matty Cash alone. Right. So, you know, as I said, you think of the influence that Grealish had in that game. He had 5.9%. Matty Cash had 8%. And yes, so it's a very valid point you raised there, mate. But look, it's a frustrating game, yes, mate. And look, I really hate coming on this podcast and talking about VAR. Guys, you know, it's for you guys at home above anything else, because there are thousands and thousands of football podcasts you can go and find that are going to talk about VAR. I'm sick of talking about it. You're sick of hearing about it. But oh my God, it does my head in. Football is dead, man. Like, it is so difficult to watch those decisions go against you, and it's like this infuriating feeling that like you're so helpless to just watch this happen in front of you, and it's this grueling process, and the drawing of the lines that takes feels like hours, and it's just like but the annoying thing is that you're watching them decide it and you know the outcome, like you just
of
know,
course.
like, this is just going to be offside, isn't it? And you know,
It takes
and you have
that
to
long.
painstaking process of the lines being moved and adjusted, and it's like the line for Ollie Watkins' shirt is like, I think, the cut-off point. That's where they draw the line from. So first of all, he's being dragged down by Ogbonna, yes, but say if Ogbonna in that scuffle had pulled his shirt sleeve up, is the line then drawn from there? Like Adama Traore, because of the size of his arms, wears his shirt essentially as a vest. So where did he, like, it's not an objective way to draw the line. Like, it drives me crazy, mate. But yeah, again, I don't want to talk on that. There are players to highlight that didn't have a good game. Mings, again, for me, the same old with Mings. You know, like, you can just at this point down in the edit, just go back and clip my last bit from the podcast where I'm talking about Mings, too complacent, the needless long balls. They were all there again today. I've never seen a 6'6" centre back have as little presence in the box on corners, both attacking and defending, as Tyrone Mings does. It genuinely blows my mind. Connor off the pace, looks sluggish, but how long has he not played in? Is that a product of that? I think possibly. I'm not trying to dig him out of a hole there, but you know, if his last start was the Fulham game. Yeah,
before Barkley came.
No, there you go. If like he hasn't started in that entire period, then you can expect a lack of match sharpness, and I think he showed that tonight. The only positive, again, mate, is Jack Grealish. He was mesmeric at points, absolutely mesmeric. What's the player we have in him? If we didn't have him, mate, then we're not playing Premier League football. It is simple as that. He is an absolutely outstanding player. Only 5 Premier League players this season have been involved in 10 or more Premier League goals. That's our captain, Harry Kane, Son Heung-min, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and Bruno Fernandes. That is some esteemed company. And what's also interesting is that we've scored the most Premier League goals from outside the box this season.
And they've all been deflections.
That is an interesting stat. Jack has 2 of those. But, you know, it's he was just absolutely outstanding tonight. And the problem is, mate, is that for all the money that we've spent, he is still so far head and shoulders above anybody else in our squad.
We have to talk about Grealish because we have to work him in the title, so people will listen to this podcast. But I mean, it's not for no reason. From the goal, from how he drove in the middle of the park with that, had the audacity to shoot. And Dan, I saw you tweet saying the big difference in Jack Grealish this season and last season is the fact that he's pulling the trigger. I think even with this chance, it's not even Grealish. It's just a Villa thing where you don't see that many, risky shots. I mean, you look at someone like Bruno Fernandes, as much as people try to meme him, first of all, you can't knock his goal contributions. Second of all, he may have 20 shots a game, but if one of them he scores as a screamer, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter that he missed the other 19, that one of them went out for a throw-in or whatever. And it's that age-old saying, if you don't shoot, you don't score. And yeah, took a deflection. I mean, it was going in anyway. Let's be honest, Dan. That was always gonna be a goal. Fabianski was going the wrong way, but I mean, he's a mercurial talent, and I mean, we don't have to sit here and talk about that because we know how good. But man, the flip flap. Did you see that flip flap in the second half? Gorgeous, to die for. We just, sorry for the listeners, we just took a second to appreciate that. It was just, it's mesmeric, and it's something from nothing. And to have a player that can just, at the drop of a hat, turn it on like that, it's wonderful, Dan. It really is. And to be honest, we're seeing how poor Villa are without Barkley, and we still have Grealish. God forbid we ever lose Grealish at any point in this season, even if we have Barkley. I mean, we know they have a wonderful chemistry. I think we would really struggle without Jack Grealish. We saw it last season, and what's worrying as well, again, no striker on the bench. Obviously, Big Wes on his recovery. Great to see all the videos. It's his birthday the other day, so shout out to Wes doing the most in his recovery. But no Keenan Davis, he's also injured. And I'm gonna bring back a dark memory, Dan, from around this time last year when we had strikers out injured and Anwar El Ghazi was playing up front for Villa. As much as we love Anwar on this channel, that's just not it, man. That don't cut it. So we've got to wrap Watkins up in cotton wool, man, because I think an injury to any of our players in the squad, it really does throw a spanner in the works. And of course it does with Jack Grealish and Ross Barkley. That goes without saying. But I think even if Louise or McGinn gets injured, we struggle so much, Dan. We really do.
Well, this is the point exactly, mate. Our third substitute today was Ahmed El Mohamedi. We have no squad depth. We're chasing a game, desperate. And yes, Matty Cash had a bad game, but your last roll of the dice is Elmo. Now, hey, no Egyptian king slander on this podcast. The GOAT. But come on, look, you're absolutely right with injuries, man. And I had this problem with the international break whereby Jack went and played the 3 games. He then came back and we were the early kickoff. And it's like, this is a lot of games. And it's not even like we have the luxury of being able to take him off after 75, because of the situations and how unpredictable and how volatile Villa can be at times. Jack Grealish has to play the full 90 because you never know when he's going to need to pull a rabbit out of the hat. He isn't our go-to guy in every situation, and if he did ever get injured, mate, we saw what happened to us in I know this is a complete difference, but look what happened to us in the Championship. Yeah. That's the difference with or without Jack Grealish. We had no Jack Grealish from about October to about January, and we were terrible. We were about 13th in the league, losing 3-0 away to Wigan. Jack Grealish comes back, we win 10 games, get promoted. There's your difference. That's what, and I don't think Jack Grealish. I know it's a completely different side, different players. I don't think the difference would be any different. I think that it is night and day. And if Grealish does get injured, man, then it would boast a whole bunch of problems for us. But no, the squad depth is still evident there to see, mate. And look, this is the problem, is we have another quick turnaround. We have 3 days, and you and I will be back on this podcast again.
Absolutely.
Talking Newcastle. And the thing is, mate, is with all this, with more games, in this current day and age, it's not just injuries you have to be worried of. It's COVID. Newcastle have had a serious part of that going around the club. It's hit several first-team players. After the Crystal Palace game, they had a few positive tests, but it wasn't any players that have been involved in the first-team squad. Now, according to the Athletic, first-team players are having to, don't take this for gospel. This is just what I've seen online, that Newcastle players are having to self-isolate because of COVID tests that have turned positive. There's that risk as well with this squad, and you do feel if we lost one of those key players, we'd be in big trouble. Which is again, when you have a quick turnaround, as I was saying for Friday, another concern.
Absolutely, and obviously Newcastle, Dan, they sit in 13th in the table. Had a really, really lucky time against Crystal Palace on the weekend, didn't they, Dan? Scoring 2 goals that late on. It was a really a hard blow to take, and it was a difficult one to watch, even as a neutral, because I empathise so much with teams who have Bruce as their manager. It's they won the game, but I mean, at what cost? Steve Bruce is your manager. You're playing the worst football in the league, and people and pundits just don't seem to get it. Steve Bruce is yesterday's man, and I've said all that, and they're going to beat us, Dan. They just are. The performance tonight lends itself to this exact scoreline on this exact script of this Crystal Palace and Newcastle game. Steve Bruce's men, disenfranchised, look uninterested in the whole game, persist on playing a low block, and it's not even like Mourinho makes a low block look sexy, and I don't know whether that's just because it's Mourinho and obviously he's got the players, but like, I mean, it's just Steve Bruce. It's Newcastle. It's frustrating. And listen, I'm sorry, you guys who come to the podcast for deep analysis, I'm sorry. I'm just dumbfounded with Steve Bruce and how his side actually managed to get the better of Palace there. I guess that game was one of them ones where both Palace fans and Newcastle fans expected to lose. So, of course, Steve Bruce is going to emerge on top in that fixture. And, I mean, Joe Linton got a goal in that game as well, so that should tell you everything you need to know. There's a lot of Joe Linton slander, rightly so in some aspects, but I do think there is a player in there. He was, one of the Golden Boys nominees a few years ago, I believe, when he was at Hoffenheim. Looked to be a very good prospect. Obviously, he's not had his luck with injuries and stuff at Newcastle, but it's not going to be a nice game, Dan. It's not. Thankfully, we're going to be back at home under the floodlights at Villa Park, and I mean,
well, is that a thankfully our home form?
That is true. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, mate, is the point that you made on Newcastle is absolutely right. I'm going to wind it back a couple of weeks. They had Everton at home. They had 37% possession and completed about 70% of their passes and won 2-1.
That's how they do it. Like, they get lucky. And, you got to work the percentages. We, as we alluded to earlier, 16 shots, 6 on target from us, only 1 goal. When the odds are so drastically stacked against you for Newcastle, I mean, I guess you do have to credit them for having that clinical edge that we clearly lack. But that's what worries me, Dan. We don't work them percentages.
Well, look, mate, and the problem is that, I was watching Match Today and Danny Murphy was praising Steve Bruce, saying that, he respects Steve Bruce for a lot that he's done. And he doesn't have very many players at his disposal. And you sort of think, like, wait a second, like, their last game, they played Callum Wilson, Alisson Maximin, and Miguel Almiron as a front three. That's so exciting. So ASM is like terrifying. He is going to scare us shitless for 90 minutes on Friday. Miguel Almiron is a player that, struggles to find the back of the net, but he's a player I really like. I'm getting pure, strong Santiago Munoz vibes of Miguel Almiron, and I'm so here for it. Callum Wilson is a bagman. You've then got Ryan Fraser. Like, Joel Linton is, as you said, there's a player in there that hasn't quite come out yet. I like Jamal Lewis. And you start to look at this and you think, actually, if you gave it to a more progressive manager, there's a really exciting base of a squad there. You've got Jonjo Shelvey, who sits at the base and has probably got, outside of De Bruyne, one of the best passing ranges in the Premier League. And you sort of to think, well, yes, I think you have to give him a lot of credit for the season that he gave Newcastle after Benitez left. But, Bruce wins games. And that's why you won't see him sacked, mate, is that they've won 2 on the bounce.
Soon to be 3.
They had won 2 on the bounce before. They've lost their last couple of games, but they'd won 2 on the bounce before that. They had that win against Everton. They won a draw away at Wolves, which is very credible. They beat Burnley at home 3-1. They had a couple of bad results, but they're against Southampton and Chelsea, so you can't really shake a stick there. They then go and beat Crystal Palace, and the performances are terrible, but they get results, mate. And when you look at their next next 5 games, really, they've got us, West Brom, Leeds, Fulham, and Brentford in the cup. And you look and think, if you're Steve Bruce, you can bruise your way to a few points there.
It's just classic Bruce, isn't it? It happens at every stint in every club that he appears at. He has these runs. He manages to get points on the board, and then he always comes out in the press and is like, "Well, I told you so." It's the arrogance that does it with me, Steve Bruce. But I mean, we've done countless podcasts, Dan, under the Steve Bruce reign that nobody listened to, and it's probably just as well because they weren't. Apart from having the pleasure of speaking to you, Dan, they weren't at all enjoyable. The football, to say, at the very least. But here we are, Dan. We should probably wrap it up here, as Aston Villa have lost 2-1 to West Ham. Hopefully, we can right all of our wrongs at home under the floodlights at Villa Park. It's about time that we get some points on the board, Dan. It's been a while. I want goals. I want excitement. I want to see Steve Bruce's face when Jack Grealish scores the winner. That's all I want from this game. I'm a simple man. That's all we need, man. That is all we need. But if you guys did enjoy this podcast, please do leave a like. Comment your thoughts below on the game and on Newcastle, what you are expecting. It's a very short turnaround, as Dan alluded to. So we won't be doing another podcast just to preview it. We don't have the time, unfortunately, with uni work and jobs and stuff. And if you haven't, it would mean the world if you guys subscribed. The channel, it's been slowing down recently. I'm going to put it down to Villa not doing very well. I think you guys are more interested when Villa are winning. It's obviously nice to talk about Villa when they win, but Dan, I've enjoyed the past 40 minutes speaking with you, as always.
As always.
But and again, if you've made it this far in the podcast, shout out to you. You are a real one. Let us know in the comments if you listen to all of the podcasts as well, so as we can see who the real ones are. So yeah, as I say, like, comment, subscribe, and up to Villa.
Just as essential to fulfilling this got potential. It's a main man, a hero. He's the main leader of the gang.